Alright, good afternoon, guys. As you can remember, yesterday we were talking about atoms and what type of stuff they make up. And so today we're going to expand on that and move a little bit bigger to cells. So our objectives for the day is to describe what an organelle is and understand the structure and function of the individual organelles within a cell. And so go ahead and take out your science notebooks and write the date for us on page 42 and write pretest. And you're going to be explaining what an organelle is. So go ahead and take 2 minutes and explain what you think an organelle is. And potentially, if you have any examples of an organelle, go ahead and throw that in there, and maybe some functions as well. So go ahead and take the next couple minutes, and then we'll bring it back. Alright, thank you. Bring it on back. Does anybody have an idea of what an organelle could be?
Is it like a baby's organs?
No, not quite. Does anybody else? No? Okay. So what an organelle is, so we're going to go ahead and write this down. So you guys can write this in your notebooks as well. So an organelle is a little organ. So we call it a little organ because it is, if you relate it to your overall body, you have different organs within your body. So you have your heart, your lungs, your digestive organs as well. And so inside of a cell, we can think of it as a little human body. And each one of these little organelles here, they're a little organ. So they function individually. They each have their own function, and they all combine together to make up the whole cell and what the cell does. So now we're going to go ahead and come over here, and we're going to look at the cell. So we're going to start off with our nucleus. So our nucleus is right here. It's usually somewhat towards the middle of the cell, not always. It can be displaced a little bit. It is the command center. So it controls what the cell does and all the different functions of a cell. And inside of the nucleus, we have what's called the nucleolus. And the nucleolus is this tightly packed center of the nucleus that has all of our DNA tightly packed into chromosomes. And so the chromosomes are what multiply when the cell is multiplying to get us new cells. Now on the outside, we have the plasma membrane. So the plasma membrane is sort of like a wall. It's semi-permeable, so some stuff can come in and out of the cell. And the plasma membrane's job is to control what is coming in and out of the cell. So its job is to decide what the cell needs inside of it. Say if it's running low on water, it can add a little bit of water from outside of the cell. And if it has some excess water, it can exit the cell as well. And it has a general structure like this. So we have our polar heads and our tails that make up the plasma membrane. So this whole thing is the plasma membrane. And these are our polar heads. And our polar heads are what is exposed to the outside. And so they love water. They're water loving. They're hydrophilic. And so the tails are hydrophobic, so they don't like water. That's why they're towards the inside and away from the outer water. And so now moving back to our cell, what we have here is our endoplasmic reticulum. All across here, that comes off the nucleus. So here we have our rough ER. And please be taking notes while you're doing this. And up here, this is our smooth ER. I'm writing it shorthanded. Make sure you write out endoplasmic reticulum in your notes. ER just stands for endoplasmic reticulum. You can write that later, but for now I want you guys to write out the full word. So the rough ER is in protein synthesis. It also has these little dots on here which give it its name, the rough ER, because it looks rough when you're looking at it. So these are the ribosomes. And ribosomes are little protein synthesis guys. And ribosomes aren't only on the rough ER, they're found throughout the cell, so they're all around. So you can find them everywhere. They all function to synthesize protein. The smooth ER functions to sort of package these proteins and get them ready for transport. And then they send them down here to this organelle. This is the Golgi apparatus. So the Golgi apparatus is this little sac-like organelle, and it functions to ship it out. So it's the shipping mechanism. So it can ship out the proteins anywhere inside of the cell if the proteins are used inside of the cell, or it can also ship them outside of the cell if they're going somewhere else, say to another cell. And so you can think of it sort of like the post office. So with all of this going on inside of a cell, we need something to store. So here we got our vacuole. It's a large sac. It can contain a lot of different things. It's a storage center. You can think of it as a warehouse. It can store water. It can store proteins. Pretty much whatever the cell needs to store for later, it can house in there. Down here, we have our lysosome. Our lysosome functions to get rid of the waste within the cell. So whenever there's something inside of the cell that's dying or that's dead and we need to get rid of it, say we have some ribosomes that aren't functioning anymore, they send it to the lysosome, and the lysosome will break it down using different chemicals in there. It has a lot of chemicals to break down all of the waste in the cell, to get rid of it and send it out. These lines that you see throughout the cell, these are called cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton are used to provide a little bit of structure for the cell, and they help to maintain its shape so that it doesn't compress and make problems for the different organelles within the cell, and also to maintain the shape of whatever the cell is making up, say if it's an organ or whatnot. The cytoskeleton can help provide rigid structure for that. And within the cell, because we have all of this empty space in here, and something needs to be in there, you can't have just empty space within a cell. So we call that the cytoplasm. Okay. So the cytoplasm makes up all of this empty space in here. It is a fluid, and it's mostly made out of water, and it functions to provide the cell with whatever it needs. So say if it's running low on water, it can take in water from the outside through the plasma membrane. And if it has excess water within the cell, it can get rid of it through the plasma membrane as well to remain in homeostasis, which we talked about yesterday. And we have our last organelle up here. Alright, this is our mitochondria. Mitochondria looks like this little oval shape, and it has these cisternae within the middle, and that functions to increase the surface area within the mitochondria. And the mitochondria's job is to supply the cell with its power. So it functions to create ATP molecules, which is the source of power for the cell. And then it uses that ATP so that the cell has enough energy to function and do all of the great things that we know cells do. Now, we're going to go ahead and take the rest of the class to do an activity. Alright, so in this activity, we're going to need to be in groups of 3 to 4. Don't get in groups yet. We'll do it in a minute. Just be thinking that you need a group of 3 or 4. First, we're going to talk about what we're doing. So this project is called the Cell City. Alright, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be connecting the cell and all of its organelles into our outside life. Now your project does not necessarily have to be a city. It can be whatever you want to connect, but you have to connect all of the organelles within the cell. So for instance, if you were doing a city and you wanted to do the nucleus, so the nucleus is the command center. And so I would consider that to be City Hall if we were doing a cell city. Now, say if you were doing a football team, that could be something like your head coach. And so it's pretty much just whatever is the control of the cell. Now what we have second, we have a vacuole. And this is our storage. So we can consider this a warehouse as my example, if I were to be doing this. And we'll do one more example for you guys. We're going to do the mitochondria. So the mitochondria creates all the energy for the cell. So we can think of this as the power plant. Or if you were doing the football team and wanted to get creative, you could do Gatorade. So that it provides the players with energy, right? And so we're going to split up in groups of 3 to 4, and we're going to be creating our cell cities. And so you're each going to get a poster board, each group, and you only have to do one. And you need to draw out your cell city. So if you were doing the nucleus and you wanted to do City Hall for your nucleus, if you were doing just the city, you would need to draw out City Hall on your poster board. And you would also need to have a little description of it and what your connection is to the nucleus. So you would have to write out, for instance, the nucleus is City Hall because it's the command center of a cell. And as long as you have that, you can do whatever you like. If you want to do a football team, if you want to do a cell city, it's pretty much anything that you can think of that can relate it to your everyday life. And so go ahead and take the rest of the class to do this, and then for the last couple minutes we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about this. Alright, thanks guys. Let's bring it back real quick to end class. So to review, organelles, what are they? They're just considered little organs. They all have a different function and structure within the cell. And so we have our mitochondria, for instance, and that one is our power plant. It creates power for the cell, and that's just one of our organelles. And so before you guys leave here today, you're going to have to answer a couple questions. First question you're going to have to answer is, what is an organelle? The second one, I'm going to ask you about an individual organelle, and you will either have to tell me the function, the structure, or where it can be found in the cell. Thanks, we'll see you tomorrow.